Right now, as you watch this, your brain is physically rewiring itself, either strengthening the neural pathways that lead to success or reinforcing the circuits that keep you stuck. Every second of consistency is literally building a superhighway in your mind, while every moment of inconsistency is allowing those pathways to decay. The question isn't whether your brain will change, it's changing right now. The question is, are you directing that change, or is it happening by accident? Neural pathway strengthening. Every time you repeat a specific action, your brain initiates a remarkable process called myelination. Myelin is a white, fatty substance produced by oligodendrocytes that wraps around the axons of your neurons like insulation around electrical wires. This isn't just a metaphor. It's a measurable, observable biological process that fundamentally changes how information travels through your nervous system. When you perform a behavior consistently, the neural pathway responsible for that behavior becomes increasingly myelinated. This myelin sheath can increase the speed of neural transmission by up to 100 times compared to unmyelinated pathways. What this means in practical terms is that actions you perform consistently literally become faster to execute at the neural level. Your brain processes these behaviors with greater efficiency, requiring less conscious effort and cognitive resources. The process doesn't happen overnight. Initial myelin formation begins within days of repeated practice, but significant structural changes occur over weeks and months. Research using diffusion tensor imaging shows that musicians who practice consistently develop thicker myelin in motor cortex pathways compared to non-musicians. Athletes demonstrate similar changes in the neural networks controlling their specific movement patterns. This myelination process explains why breaking a well-established habit feels so difficult. You're not just fighting willpower. You're working against a highly efficient myelinated neural superhighway that your brain has invested significant biological resources into building. Conversely, when you're building a new consistent behavior, you're literally constructing new neural infrastructure. The beauty of this system is its democratic nature. Your brain doesn't discriminate between good and bad behaviors. When it comes to myelination, it simply strengthens whatever pathways you use most frequently. This biological reality means that consistency becomes a choice of neural architecture. Each day you choose to repeat a behavior, you're making a biological investment in that neural pathway, making future repetitions increasingly automatic. The oligodendrocytes that produce myelin respond to the electrical activity generated by repeated neural firing. The more frequently a pathway is activated, the more these cells wrap myelin around that particular neural circuit. This creates a positive feedback loop where consistent behavior becomes biologically easier to maintain over time, eventually requiring minimal conscious effort to execute. The 1% compound effect, the mathematics behind small, consistent improvements, reveal one of the most powerful principles in human performance optimization. When you improve by just 1% each day, you're not engaging in linear growth, you're triggering exponential compound growth that follows the mathematical formula. This means that after 365 days of 1% daily improvements, you're not just 365% better, you're nearly 38 times more capable than when you started. This principle operates across every measurable domain of human performance. In physical fitness, a 1% daily improvement might manifest as adding one extra repetition to your workout, increasing your running pace by a few seconds, or improving your flexibility by a small degree. These micro improvements seem insignificant in isolation, but they compound through physiological adaptations. Your cardiovascular system responds by increasing stroke volume, your muscles adapt through protein synthesis, and your nervous system improves motor unit recruitment patterns. The compound effect becomes even more dramatic when applied to skill acquisition. Consider learning a new language, Memorizing just 5 new words daily represents approximately a 1% improvement in vocabulary for a beginner. After 1 year, this consistent practice results in a vocabulary of over 1,800 words, sufficient for basic conversational fluency. The neural networks responsible for language processing strengthen through this consistent exposure, creating connections between auditory processing memory systems and motor speech areas. In cognitive performance, the compound effect manifests through what neuroscientists call meta-learning, literally learning how to learn more effectively. Each day you engage in deliberate practice, you're not just improving in that specific domain, you're strengthening the executive attention networks in your prefrontal cortex that govern all learning processes. This creates a multiplicative effect where your capacity to acquire new skills itself improves over time. The inverse is equally powerful and often overlooked. A 1% daily decline, whether in habits, skills, or health markers, follows the same mathematical principle in reverse. 0.99, 365 equals 0.3, meaning that small, consistent negative behaviors compound into a 97% decline over 1 year. This mathematical reality explains why seemingly minor inconsistencies, skipping workouts occasionally, procrastinating on important tasks, or neglecting relationships can lead to dramatic deterioration over time. The compound effect operates independently of motivation, emotion, or circumstances. It's a mathematical law that responds only to consistency over time, making it one of the most reliable predictors of long-term success across any domain of human endeavor. Environmental design beats willpower. Your environment functions as an external operating system for your brain, constantly sending signals that either support or undermine consistent behavior. Every object, spatial arrangement, and contextual cue in your surroundings triggers automatic neural responses below the threshold of conscious awareness. These environmental triggers activate what neuroscientists call the context-dependent memory network, which links specific locations and objects to behavioral patterns stored in your basal ganglia. Research in environmental psychology demonstrates that willpower operates like a finite resource. It depletes throughout the day as your prefrontal cortex manages decision-making and impulse control. However, environmental cues bypass this willpower-dependent system entirely by triggering automatic behavioral responses through subcortical pathways. When you strategically design your environment, you're essentially programming your unconscious mind to make consistent choices without requiring conscious effort or decision-making. Consider the neuroscience of visual priming. When your workout clothes are visible and easily accessible, your visual cortex processes this information and sends signals to motor planning areas in your brain, pre-activating the neural networks associated with exercise. This pre-activation makes the decision to work out neurologically easier because the relevant pathways are already partially engaged. Conversely, when exercise equipment is hidden or difficult to access, your brain must overcome additional neural resistance to initiate the behavior. The same principle applies to digital environments. The mere presence of your smartphone, even when silenced, creates what researchers call brain drain, a measurable reduction in cognitive capacity as part of your attention remains allocated to monitoring potential notifications. Apps positioned prominently on your home screen create visual triggers that activate reward anticipation circuits in your nucleus accumbens, making it neurologically difficult to resist engagement. These changes work because they align with how your brain actually processes environmental information automatically, continuously, and below conscious awareness. Identity-based transformation. Every action you take registers as a vote in your brain's identity accounting system, a complex neural process involving the medial prefrontal cortex, posterior cingulate cortex, and angular gyrus, collectively known as the default mode network. This network operates continuously, even during rest, constructing and maintaining your sense of self through pattern recognition across your behaviors, thoughts, and experiences. When you act consistently with a desired identity, you're literally rewiring these neural circuits to incorporate new behavioral patterns into your core sense of who you are. The transformation begins at the synaptic level. Each time you perform an action aligned with your intended identity, whether exercising daily, reading scientific literature, or practicing a musical instrument, you strengthen the neural connections between that behavior and your self-concept. This process involves long-term potentiation, where synapses that fire together become increasingly likely to fire together in the future. Your brain begins to associate these consistent behaviors with your fundamental identity rather than viewing them as external impositions or temporary changes. Neuroimaging studies reveal that people who maintain consistent practices over 6 months show measurable structural changes in brain regions associated with self-referential processing. The medial prefrontal cortex, which processes information about the self, develops increased gray matter density and stronger connectivity with areas responsible for habit formation and motor control. This means that your identity-based behaviors become neurologically integrated into your sense of self at the physical level. The default mode network begins incorporating these behavioral patterns into its baseline activity, meaning your brain thinks of you as an exerciser even when you're not actively exercising. This identity shift creates a powerful feedback loop. As your neural identity updates to match your consistent behaviors, future actions become cognitively easier because they align with your brain's updated self-concept rather than conflicting with it. Acting inconsistently with your established neural identity creates cognitive dissonance, a measurable state of neural conflict that your brain actively seeks to resolve by either changing the behavior or updating the identity. When you've built sufficient behavioral evidence through consistency, your brain chooses to maintain the behavior to preserve identity coherence, making consistency self-reinforcing at the neurobiological level. Biological rhythm alignment: your body operates on precisely timed biological cycles controlled by the suprachiasmatic nucleus, a cluster of approximately 20,000 neurons located in your hypothalamus that functions as your master circadian clock. This biological timekeeper coordinates virtually every physiological process in your body, from hormone release and body temperature fluctuations to cellular repair and cognitive performance peaks. When you align your consistent behaviors with these natural rhythms, you're essentially synchronizing your actions with millions of years of evolutionary optimization. The suprachiasmatic nucleus responds to light exposure and behavioral timing cues, entraining your entire physiology to expect certain activities at specific times. Cortisol, your primary stress hormone, naturally peaks between 6-8 a.m. to promote wakefulness and energy mobilization. Growth hormone releases in pulses during deep sleep stages, particularly between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. Testosterone follows a predictable daily pattern in most individuals, typically peaking in early morning hours. When you perform consistent behaviors at optimal biological times, you're working with these hormonal fluctuations rather than against them. Sleep consistency serves as the foundation for all other circadian processes. Going to bed and waking up at the same time, even on weekends, strengthens what chronobiologists call circadian amplitude, the difference between your biological highs and lows throughout the day. Strong circadian amplitude translates to better sleep quality, improved cognitive function during peak hours, more efficient metabolism, and enhanced immune system performance. Research shows that people with consistent sleep schedules have up to 23% better cognitive performance and 37% stronger immune responses compared to those with irregular sleep patterns. Exercise timing demonstrates particularly powerful circadian effects. Consistent morning exercise enhances cortisol's natural awakening response and improves insulin sensitivity throughout the day. Evening exercise performed at the same time daily can help regulate melatonin production and improve sleep onset. Your muscles, liver, and adipose tissue all contain peripheral clocks that synchronize with your exercise timing, optimizing metabolism and recovery processes. Even meal timing influences circadian biology through what scientists call food entrainable oscillators. Eating at consistent times trains your digestive system to anticipate nutrients, optimizing enzyme production, gastric acid secretion, and insulin sensitivity. This temporal meal preparation can improve nutrient absorption by up to 30% and reduce metabolic stress compared to irregular eating patterns. Your gut microbiome also exhibits circadian rhythms that align with consistent feeding schedules, influencing everything from mood regulation to immune function through the gut-brain axis. Predictability builds trust. Human brains are prediction machines, constantly generating models of future events based on past patterns. The anterior cingulate cortex and insula work together to detect prediction errors moments when reality doesn't match expectations, triggering stress responses and uncertainty. When you demonstrate consistent behavior patterns, you're essentially providing other people's brains with reliable data to build accurate predictive models about your actions, reducing their cognitive load and creating what neuroscientists call social safety signals. Trust formation occurs through a specific neural process involving the ventromedial prefrontal cortex and the temporoparietal junction. These regions evaluate social information and assess the reliability of others' behavioral patterns. When someone consistently follows through on commitments, arrives on time, or maintains predictable communication patterns, these brain areas register this consistency as evidence of trustworthiness. The more consistent data points accumulated, the stronger the neural pathways associated with trust become. In professional environments, consistency creates what organizational psychologists term psychological safety, the shared belief that the environment is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. When team members can predict your decision-making processes, communication style, and follow-through patterns, their brains can allocate cognitive resources to creative problem-solving rather than constantly monitoring for unpredictable behaviors. Research in workplace neuroscience shows that teams with consistent leaders demonstrate 76% higher engagement and 40% better performance metrics compared to teams with unpredictable leadership patterns. The neural basis of leadership often comes down to consistency more than charisma. Mirror neuron systems in observers' brains automatically simulate and predict the actions of leaders they're watching. When a leader's behavior patterns are consistent, these mirror neuron networks can accurately predict their responses, creating a sense of stability and reliability. Inconsistent leaders trigger constant prediction errors in followers' brains, leading to chronic low-level stress responses that impair decision-making and collaboration. Romantic relationships demonstrate perhaps the most profound effects of behavioral consistency on trust formation. The attachment system in the brain, involving the hypothalamus, amygdala, and reward circuitry, continuously monitors partner behavior for consistency with stated commitments and values. Consistent alignment between words and actions strengthens pair bonding neural pathways and increases oxytocin and vasopressin, release hormones that promote long-term attachment and relationship satisfaction. Partners who demonstrate behavioral consistency show 67% higher relationship satisfaction scores and 45% lower cortisol levels during conflicts, indicating reduced stress responses even during challenging interactions. Your next 24 hours will either strengthen the neural pathways toward your goals or reinforce the circuits keeping you where you are. There is no neutral ground in neuroplasticity. Choose one behavior, just one, that aligns with who you want to become and commit to it for the next 7 days. Your brain is waiting to build the superhighway. Give it the consistent signal it needs. The question isn't whether you can change. The question is whether you will choose to direct that change starting today.